やっぱ本物の海賊が言うことも迫力も段違いだ。すげえ。うん。
For this episode, I want to focus on this interaction between Usopp and Klahadore. This feels like the moment where Luffy realizes that he wants Usopp to join his crew. Even though Usopp has shown that he isn't much of a fighter, he proves his value when Klahadore insults his father. Usopp does not entertain these insults for a second. Just like Shanks, Luffy can abide most things, but when someone comes after his friends, he will put his life on the line for them. This is an important distinction that we will see in who Luffy recruits to his crew. Think back to Kabaji, Buggy's right hand. He didn't see any difference between his enemies and his own crewmates. What Usopp shows in this moment is not that he is the strongest warrior, but that he will not stand by while Klahadore calls him a bastard and refers to his father as a filthy fraud. Usopp may not provide as much raw power to a crew on paper, but in this moment, we see that Usopp will put his life on the line to stand up for his friends. That's what earns him Luffy's respect. In the coming 1,000 episodes, we will see time and again why Luffy's crew feels different from other pirate crews. It's a crew built on friendship, not individual strength. Today's episode is brought to you by despair. We've all felt it before, albeit at different levels of intensity. While it's pointless to compare varying degrees of suffering, we can all agree that Usopp is going through it this episode. The story is essentially a reimagining of The Boy Who Cried Wolf, but it's a retelling worth hearing. After crying pirate so many times, Usopp is unable to warn anyone of Kuro's plan. Worse than that, the town is so sick of Usopp's lies that they form a mob and chase him. Even Kaya doesn't believe him. There's a real moment here where Usopp suddenly becomes aware of the reputation he has earned. There was never anything vindictive in the lies he told, and in the case of Kaya, he lied to her because he wanted to entertain her. That's pretty brutal. While desperately trying to save Kaya and his village, he is told by everyone he cares about that they are choosing to believe the very man who's planning their destruction. Despite lacking strength and power, he prepares himself for what will likely come to pass. Pirates are coming to destroy his village, and the only one who believes it is himself, except for his crewmates. Onion, Carrot, and Pepper believe him and want to fight beside him. This time, he lies to them, saying that Kuro's plan was all his own creation, and the three boys don't take it well. And we see that their insults sink Usopp further into his despair. He doesn't believe he has a chance of winning, but he knows that he will do all that he can, even if it will almost certainly lead to his death. He's wounded, beaten down, and facing insurmountable odds, but he isn't alone. Luffy was ready to fight alongside Usopp, but this last interaction wins over Zoro and Nami. They pledged to fight alongside him, but even then, he's so tangled up in his lies, he thinks that they are trying to save him out of pity. Luffy says, as if we'd risk our lives because of sympathy. The easy lesson from this is that we should try to act more like Luffy. He's always willing to put his best foot forward for the people that he believes in. I think it's more important to try to learn from Usopp's mistake. We shouldn't deny ourselves help in whatever form that might take because we think it's offered out of pity. Sometimes we can find ourselves in places that are hard to get out of alone. When a friend reaches out a hand, it's important to take it.
お前らのキャプテンならな。食っちめって。
Last episode, we saw the best of Luffy, Zoro, and Usopp. Usopp showed that despite his lies, he cares deeply for Kaya and the rest of his village. Luffy and Zoro want to put their lives on the line because they respect Usopp and want to help him. Nami's been traveling with Luffy and Zoro, and she's been clear that she is only working with them while their goals align. She has her own motivations that drive her, and Zoro and Luffy respect that. Yet, none of them are fighting with Usopp because they pity him. I don't mean to rehash all of the last episode, but this is the first real moment that captures the essence of One Piece. It's a story of a small crew that is stronger as a whole because there's love and respect between the individuals in that crew. In this case, the four of them are able to come together to try and defeat a foe that they couldn't stop alone. The fact that they cannot succeed alone doesn't weigh down their spirits. Even if their enemies appear insurmountable, they can stand their ground with confidence because together they know they have a chance to win. That was where we left things in the last episode. In this episode, Usopp reveals his plan, but we know that things won't be that easy. The story relies on a back and forth, so we know that the pirates will find a way to get past the greased up slope and that the heroes will need to respond. However, it does feel like their chance of success will only work if they can outmaneuver the Kuro pirates. With enough planning, they can build on their confidence and know that following their plan will lead to victory. As we know, that's not quite how it goes. Usopp failed to remember that there was actually another point of entry for the Kuro pirates, and that his whole plan was useless before the battle had even begun. Luffy gets lost running to that second point of entry because he was told to run north, and decided to run in the direction that felt the coldest. Nami accidentally falls into the trap that she helped set up, and in an attempt to save herself, she pulls Zoro down in her stead. It's a common occurrence in One Piece, and it's one that I absolutely love. As a person with bad anxiety, I often lose myself in the fear that things will spiral out of control, just like it does here. Sometimes it does fall apart at once, and it feels hopeless from the beginning. Our heroes are scattered across the island, Kuro has already killed someone in the mansion, and the best fighters, Zoro and Luffy, are nowhere near the actual fighting. Yet Usopp, Luffy, and Zoro never give up. Zoro uses his swords to get himself up the slope, Luffy probably runs around the entire island, and Usopp doesn't stop fighting. At the end of the day, Usopp is not a strong fighter, and the power of friendship will not change that. Let's be clear, Usopp has lost this fight. When we see him grab the pirate's ankle, a fruitless attempt to slow them down that will almost surely lead to his own death, it feels like pure desperation. But whether or not it was the right move, he was able to slow them down. He did everything that he could, keeping them away from the village long enough for Zoro and Luffy to arrive. Perhaps it's dramatic to say that Luffy and Zoro showing up felt like the most uplifting and satisfying way to end the episode, but it's how I feel. The fact is, the world is messy, and it can feel like the odds of things working out plummet by the second. Sometimes it feels like nothing you do makes a difference and the goal ahead feels so distant, but just doing what you can is important. Sometimes the torch needs to be carried just a few more inches. If we trust and respect the people around us, we can make sure that we keep moving towards that positive outcome. There are times where I think ahead toward the sheer mass of episodes, and I wonder if I will reach an episode where I have nothing to say. I won't pretend like One Piece is at its best for all 1,000 episodes, but will there come a point after writing 300 or 400 of these where I'll truly have nothing to write about? It's a question that still haunts me and will likely never stop hanging over me until we get there. What gives me confidence is the little details that I've already seen in this One Piece rewatch. Take the B plot in this episode. Kaya discovers that Usopp has been trying to tell the truth all along, and after slapping him and sending him away, she might have doomed herself and the rest of the town. It goes to show the attention to detail Oda gives to the whole world. Think about Kaya's nightmare, waking up to find Usopp standing over her with a sword, stabbing her in anger. It shows the grasp that Klahadore has had on her. She trusted him so completely that perhaps subconsciously she accepted Klahadore's version of Usopp. It's a moment that could have been dropped. We don't need to know how Kaya felt in the wake of her decision to push Usopp away and trust Klahadore, but it twists the knife. It's creating stakes that make the moment more dramatic. It's no longer the general danger of the village, it's that Kaya might have to watch all of this unfold, knowing this could have been avoided if she trusted her friend. It also works to grow the world into something more intricate and expansive. It's this attention to detail that accumulates over 25 years to become a fictional world that feels inhabited by the characters that the audience knows and cares about. But even between the central characters, like Zoro and Usopp, we have these small moments that that create the foundation of their bond. Usopp tries to intervene in Zoro's fight. He fires his slingshot at an enemy locked in combat with Zoro, but Zoro steps in the way, allowing himself to get hit. Zoro is naturally stronger, and he has no problem fighting powerful enemies to protect his friends. He knew that Usopp was badly injured, and while he was fending off the Miaoban brothers' attack, he knew he might not be able to stop them both if they decided to attack Usopp and Nami. These characters are learning both how to fight alongside each other, but also who they are as people. Usopp learns that he can trust Zoro, both in his ability to fight and his willingness to take on larger challenges if it means he can protect his friends. I've heard these small moments occasionally referred to as filler. In the grand scheme of the adventure as a whole, the Miaoban brothers are so ancillary that it feels like this fight has little to no bearing on the story of One Piece. But, like many great stories, the plot is valued equally here to the characters in the world. You don't just watch One Piece to watch pirates search for treasure, you watch it to see Luffy, Zoro, Nami, and Usopp search for the One Piece. Even if this will have little bearing on Zoro's overall journey as a swordsman, it captured a moment that will eventually form one of the many bonds that keep the show in so many hearts for 25 years. In episode 4, I discussed all that makes Shanks such a great role model and friend to Luffy, and I reflected that good leadership like that is often hard to come by. Oda's idea of what makes a good leader is one that is explored throughout One Piece. It's why we see so many interactions between captains and their subordinates. Kuro perceives his men as mere pawns in his plan. They know it themselves. He tells them that if they cannot follow his plans, he will simply eliminate them. This isn't a particularly strange attitude amongst villains, particularly of the cartoon variety. Kuro starts the episode by threatening to kill his men if they are unable to defeat Luffy and his friends. Not that Luffy heard any of that, he's been sleeping since the middle of episode 13. When Nami is finally able to wake him up, Luffy flings her out of harm's way, albeit because he was angry she woke him up. It's comedic, him and Nami yelling at each other until reality hits and Nami begins to pass out from her injuries. The moment Luffy sees that Nami is hurt, he is only focused on helping her. It's important that Nami woke Luffy when she did because Luffy then witnesses what follows between Kuro and Kaya. She offers her fortune to Kuro as long as he leaves the island in peace. And then we have a real moment where Oda gives us a taste of what villainy can look like in the One Piece universe. Kuro tells her how he fostered trust amongst the people in the village and how he wants to keep those feelings intact. We begin to see why he was so insistent that his plan be followed so carefully. Kuro views everyone else as mere pieces in his game to bring him the most satisfaction. He's a sociopath who has simply grown tired of this part of the game. Even when Kaya pulls a gun on Kuro, he is able to manipulate her with the same act he used for 3 years as her butler. She finds it impossible to shoot him, and he is able to regain the upper hand. Usopp then picks up the gun and fires a shot, and we see that Kuro was never in danger as he easily steps out of the way. He did all of that simply because he enjoyed manipulating Kaya. And finally, Luffy intervenes. Once again, I know that this is fiction and we can't neatly match every lesson on TV to our own dystopian world, but with how cartoonishly evil Kuro is, it's sometimes hard to believe he was able to assemble a crew of pirates that were willing to follow his lead in the first place. If you had to choose to follow either Kuro or Luffy, it feels like a rhetorical question to ask which one you'd choose. Yet the question feels much more complicated when we draw comparisons to our own world. Why do we so often support, with our money, our time, or our vote, individuals and organizations that are only focused on helping themselves, often at our own expense? Just like Kaya, we are so often swayed by empty promises and gestures. They try to keep us fearful of our friends, neighbors, or marginalized communities, just as Kuro convinced Kaya that Usopp was a filthy pirate unworthy of her trust. And then there's Luffy. It's obvious that Luffy isn't the leader of his crew because he is the smartest, but it also doesn't really have to do with his strength either. One could make the argument that, at this point, Zoro is stronger than Luffy. Luffy is a great leader because he uses his power to help his friends, not to subjugate those with less. When a threat appears, Kuro will command his men to die in his stead, while Luffy will make sure that none of his friends get hurt. Obviously, Oda didn't write One Piece to apply specifically to the politics of today, but like all great forms of artistic expression, the artist's beliefs and desires are bound within the work. Unfortunately, there is no real-life equivalent to Luffy, but there are many leaders that act like Kuro. It's leaders who use their power to slash benefits meant to uplift their communities in favor of funding countermeasures against a boogeyman that they swear is more pressing. You can't punch them in the face, but you can vote them out of office. We grant our leaders their power, so it is only right that they only use that power to help the communities that they represent. Last episode, I compared Kuro's leadership to Luffy's. In this episode, we get to see where Usopp stands amongst other captains and how they view their crew. The last interaction we saw between Usopp and his men was him lying to try and keep them out of harm's way. At the moment, Onion, Pepper, and Carrot believed Usopp's lie. However, they had strong doubts that Usopp would ever tell such a hurtful lie, and upon investigating further, they saw that Kuro was in fact planning on killing Kaya and destroying the rest of the village. After following Kaya to the beach, they jump at the chance to attack Kuro after he was knocked down by Luffy. Usopp tries to stop them, knowing that they're only children and they'd only be putting themselves in danger. Although all of them are able to land a blow on Kuro, their attacks only anger him. Usopp knows he can't protect them if Kuro turns his fury on the three boys. But Usopp is not as powerful as Luffy. He still wants to protect them, knowing how much trust they've placed in him as their leader. Usopp is not as powerful as Luffy, but he still tries to protect his allies any way he can. Then there's a turn. The situation is becoming more dire. Kuro stands between our heroes and Kaya, and Django is ordered to kill her. Usopp doesn't want to ask this of his friends, but he realizes that he has no choice but to rely on these young boys who have put so much trust in him. After all, the fight is not over. He tells them to take Kaya and run away, knowing that if they try to fight Django, they will be overwhelmed and killed. This might seem like a drop in the bucket toward a victory for Usopp and his friends. After all, Luffy is able to hold off Kuro long enough to allow Zoro and Usopp to go after Django. Perhaps, but Kaya is still reeling from Kuro's betrayal and manipulation, and it is the three boys that are able to get her moving, buying them a little extra time. Why are Kuro's men fighting for him? It seems to be largely out of fear, and for good reason. They were told that if they cannot follow his plan, he will kill them all. Kuro is not attempting to achieve his goal with his crew intact. While his men are stronger than Onion, Pepper, and Carrot, there are real shortcomings to viewing one's subordinates as kindling on the fire of one's own ambition. They may be able to function as a crew, but unlike the Usopp pirates who spring into action at their captain's orders, the Kuro pirates are only able to cower at the impossibility of their task. They know that they are not strong enough to defeat Zoro and Luffy, nor are they strong enough to challenge Kuro. They're doomed either way. Just because Kuro's style of leadership is more prevalent in our world than Usopp's, it's an important message to take in. Although the world often operates through predatory hierarchies, that doesn't mean we should buy into the idea that managing people through fear is an effective way to lead. We see how Usopp's care for these three boys creates a more powerful bond, one that does not bend even when the situation seems hopeless. We must make sure that we lead like Usopp or abandon leaders like Kuro, as anyone who doesn't value a person because they're beneath them should not be in power in the first place. Hi everyone, Ciano here. If you've only been following this YouTube channel, you might be a little confused at the sudden influx of One Piece content, seemingly with no particular organization. I wasn't sure what route I wanted to take in this project to rewatch and deeply analyze every episode of One Piece. It started as Substack articles, but I wanted to reach a larger audience. I experimented with shorts and episodes where I read out the entire script, but it felt like neither was what I wanted to be doing. My buddy Ryan, who who also has an amazing YouTube channel, link in the description below, had the idea to release 5 episodes at a time all in one bigger video. And that's what this is here. If you're a fan of this project, I would really appreciate you subscribing. If you want daily updates, make sure you follow the Major Fixation Substack, also link below, and I'll try to keep publishing the shorts as a preview for the large video that will drop later. I hope that you all enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed making it, and please leave your thoughts in the comments on the episodes or this new structure. Thank you so much for watching. All I have left to say is